All right. Well, welcome to another expert interview. Really excited for today's guest. As always, let's jump straight into it. Dan, why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
So my name's Dan Marell. I live in a place called Sin City. If you ever heard of it? No, I'm in Vegas. Been here the last 17 years. Originally from New York, but most recently, after being in the hospitality industry out here and having different consulting opportunities, that kind of just came my way. I started my own consulting agency, and that's what we do. We're a fractional COO on demand, so we can jump in and I think what a lot of you and I both do is very similar in helping different business owners figure out what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right, how to do that better, how to scale, right, all that fun stuff. So that's what we do.
Love it, man. I always like to ask the question about trends. So in yours,
Sure.
it's different because it's consulting, but what are some things that are hot topics or trending with your clients or the conversations you're having?
Well, I would say supply chain is a big one right now. If you're selling a product of any kind, right, you're dealing with some of the supply chain issues that are happening. They started happening, during COVID or maybe a few months into it. And one of my main clients is in that world, right? They're a manufacturer, distributor. And so they're heavily involved in all aspects of the supply chain and logistics. And I saw this coming, like what everyone's complaining about, like today, like restaurants can't get cups or gloves, or, there's back orders of toilet paper still, but it's not really, consumers are starting to just feel what we saw coming 6 to 8 months ago, just because we realized what was happening. I mean, the price to ship a container of goods from China to the US has tripled in the last 12 months. So it's insane. And so, everyone's complaining about inflation, right? But they didn't see all this coming. So that's, I think, one trend that a lot of people are talking about.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit. So if that's a challenge that, people in, I mean, that it's impacting, I don't want to say every industry, but damn sure a lot of them. If you're talking to a business owner and that's something they're facing, what are some of those conversations? How do they overcome that? What are some options they have?
Well, what a lot of people have had to do is there's just constant price increases. So we're getting, one of my clients is getting price increase letters literally monthly, like monthly. They used to get them annually before COVID, and now they're getting them monthly from some of the manufacturers. And it's not, traditionally there was maybe a 2 to 5% increase at the most annually. Now they're getting, I've seen anything from 3 to 20% increases monthly. So it's just, what used to cost a case of plastic cups at a restaurant would buy to, 16-ounce pint cups, right, to put a beer in, used to be $30. Now it's 60, right? So all the different, right, from the cost of goods and the manufacturing side to the cost of shipping, it's made things so much more expensive. And most consumers don't notice it because when it hits them, it's small amounts. But I think people are realizing it when it comes to gasoline, that's for sure. I think that's the hot topic, right? You see everyone complaining on the internet about their gas prices.
But, well, and that has a business impact as well. When you dig
that's
into
part of it.
Yeah, when you dig into this breakdown, I think part of it, talking to business owners is, now, and I think, COVID kind of brought it out as well. It's important you know your numbers, right? Like you've got to know, you have to know your costs, right? You have to know what you're making. You have to know what your margins look like.
Right.
Because if these things are moving and you're not going to move with them, you don't know where those tolerances are. Do you have any guidance with people on like how often or any cash flow conversations you have with your clients?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just the bigger picture is adapt or die, right? And so you have to know your numbers, you have to know your bottom line, you have to understand, what's going on in your business. Otherwise, what I've noticed with I don't want to like say, I can't, I don't want to say names, but I've noticed if you're not on top of it, and I've seen it, and it's happening right now, right? I just was involved in putting an order for a customer, and you know, I don't do checks and balances on it all day long, but there was one item on the order that I had to be involved in, and so I looked at the rest of the order, and the two other line items were going out under cost. Like, so I'm just like, come on, like you got to stay on top. You have to stay on top of it, because these price increases are happening so rapidly that you really have to be on top of it. You really have to either monitor your business and know what's going on, or have someone that you trust that's taking a look at that stuff on a daily basis. So things aren't going out, under cost. That's just like, you're just asking to go out of business, right? That's a recipe for bankruptcy. So, you just have to really be on top of things a lot more than I think you used to in the past. But you have to just, I think a lot of end users are understanding of what's going on. So if you're just proactive, and I'm a big believer in being proactive versus reactive. So as long as you're proactive and you explain it in the right way to the customer or to your end user or your client, whatever, that look, this is what's happening. Like, transparency is key. This is what's happening. I'm just letting you know, like, your prices aren't changing today, but like things are heading in that direction. So I'm just letting you, giving you a heads up that you have to kind of just massage it in, right? And you don't want to just hit them with, hey, like, your cost of goods are 50% higher. It's either, and that's it, right? Tough shit. But when you massage it in a little bit better, they seem to take it a lot better. But that's where building the right relationships with people and having that solid, that solid camaraderie in business can really make a difference in losing or keeping your clients in these volatile times of price issues.
I love that. And I was just going to ask, like, how do you have that conversation? So thank you for bringing that up, because
Sure.
It is one of those conversations that's going to be, it's tough. Like, none of us want to have it, right? We want to drive great value and exceptional price to our client base, but when it's moving, you don't have a choice, right? So get ahead of it, have those conversations now, let your clients know what's coming.
Right.
Because the last thing you want to do is just shock them, right? Because then they're going to start price shopping, or they're going to have that kind of animosity. So great advice there.
That's what's happening. So I preach this to anyone that I've worked with, or that I talk to. Like, just be transparent with your customers and your clients, and you need to be aware and understand what's going on in the world, right? So you can properly adjust, and then massage that conversation in with them, that things are changing. And COVID has been, whether you want to blame COVID or not, it's a great scapegoat, and unfortunately, right, in the world. Like, people are using COVID to not pay their bills. People are using COVID to raise prices. People will use COVID for any excuse that you want. So it's definitely part of the problem. And I think we just need to get back to get back to normal. We need to get back to work. And that's just not here. It's overall in the whole globally, right? A lot of these logistical challenges are coming from overseas, right? So like, they're not, the factories aren't at full capacity. Plus the demand is insane right now. You didn't ask me, but I'll just kind of keep going.
Yeah, do it. No, this is great.
I have a really, one of my closest friends here in town is a director at one of the busiest restaurants on the Strip. And he was telling me that they're busier now than they were in 2019 before COVID. Jeez. So you have like a double whammy, right? Like, the manufacturing has slowed down, and then the demand for everything is higher. So not only could the manufacturing not even keep up they can't keep up with 2019 numbers, and it's more now, right? So they just can't keep up. And they're running like half staff, right? So there's issues with raw materials. Like, that's really, it's stemming so far down the supply chain line. And customers are really just feeling it today, but we've seen this coming for over a year.
I love that. And I love that being agile. I like that comparison too, because it's not just the supply chain, right? It is that the demand is increased as well. And you're seeing that in a lot of industries. I want to talk about vendors. So I know something you do really well for your clients and anyone in your network is you're a phenomenal connector. You're always looking for good resources for people. Can we take some time and talk about that? Like, how often should a business like look at their vendor list and really evaluate, how much are they spending? What are they actually getting for what they're spending? Like, what's your recommendation there? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. I think I'm trying to think how to answer that. You need to always be looking at your vendors. And I think it's important to have multiple vendors for the same product. You never know what could happen. And if one vendor goes under or they have issues with with their manufacturer, you need to be able to pivot and reach out to another one. So, I think that I like three. Three is like my number. You don't necessarily, the more you have, the harder it becomes to manage, but it really depends on what you're buying and selling. But I think three vendors that you can reach out to, or you at least have relationships with at least three different vendors for each product that you're selling, is a good way to have protection over your personal supply chain. So if one vendor goes out, or one vendor's like, sorry, my manufacturing lines are full because I have an agreement with this other guy, I can't help you. You at least have, backups. I know people do it to clients of mine, where they're not the preferred vendor, they're the backup. Like perfect example is one of my clients is the backup vendor for like T-Mobile Arena and Allegiant Stadium here in Vegas. They're not the main vendor, but when that vendor can't get them something, they call my client and they want to work with them. So it's a good way to get your foot in the door, and also like, hey, look, we helped you with this, throw more business our way. So if you can come through and be the hero, I think that's always a win. But you need to have multiple vendors that you work with to be able to have access to, different sources of the same product.
Well, what a great way to look at that too, right? Because I like that pivot to not only do you need multiple vendors, right? And you can transition that into services, right? Like I always tell my clients, stay curious and never settle, right? So even if we look at like your insurance broker, right? I hope you have a great relationship with your insurance broker, but you damn sure should be meeting some other insurance brokers and getting to know them, because if your insurance broker decides to sell their book at some point,
right,
they're not going to consult you when they do that. That's their business, but you may end up with really shitty service all of a sudden, right? And it'd be nice to have 2 or 3 other people. You could be like, hey man, you know what? You've earned my business. We built a good relationship. Hey, this hasn't worked. Happy to move to you. And then vice versa.
Right.
You should be working to build those relationships so that you're someone's second or third option, because you're always showing up and you're always adding value. I love that, man. Great insight.
Yeah. And I think, you touched on it too, just there a little bit also, but yeah, it's great to have an awesome relationship and be friends, business friends, whatever you want to call it, with your vendors or with your strategic partners. But you should never really get too comfortable, right? You want to make sure you're still getting good value for your money. You don't want to, the easiest way to ruin a relationship is for someone to find out that you've been overcharging them for 3 years, right? So I think that's important too, right? If you're gonna, insurance is like such a perfect example, because if especially the property and casualty side of the insurance industry, because there's no loyalties there. It's all about price, right? So you're getting the same coverage from different insurance companies, right? So like $500,000 policy is $500,000. but one company might charge you, an $80 a month premium, where another one is going to charge you half the price. So it's good to have, from that side of it, it's good to have some sort of, annual checks and balances with your vendors to make sure you're still getting good value, and that no one's taking advantage of their relationship.
Love that. So let's talk about when we started. You said you're giving a talk. I want to say it was tomorrow, right?
Thursday.
Thursday. So
yeah,
what's that topic? Because I think we should dig in there a little bit.
Cool.
It sounded really interesting.
Yeah, it is. So we have one of the companies that I'm a partner in, the Social Register. It's a B2B networking community, and we have a partnership with the White Label Expo. It's an annual expo that brings in a bunch of different vendors from all over the world, and where they're promoting their business, and they're looking for affiliates, right? That's the white label model, right? So they're looking for affiliates. I'm not sure, how each company has their structure set up, whether it's, an affiliate marketing company, or they just white label websites. I don't know that yet, but it's gonna, in that world, is networking is key. So what my partner Mary Grace, who is the owner and CEO of the Social Register, the two of us, and then two of our other strategic partners, John Miniana and Dave Berlin, they have their own businesses too. We're speaking on a panel about how the name of the topic is B2B is dead, and we're talking about how the old methodology of B2B networking, or B2B sales, or B2B relationship building is changing, and there's a shift, and how to build true organic relationships, as opposed to, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you probably get at least 5 cold LinkedIn outreach sales pitches per week, right? At least 5. It's probably around there. Right?
I would bet, yeah. And at this point, if you have a pulse, you're probably getting that.
Right. So that's, cold outreach, cold B2B outreach is just, it's dead. Like it's not the most time benefiting method of reaching out to people, right? It's just, it's dead. So that's kind of what we're talking about, is how businesses can actually network and create true, organic, meaningful connections and relationships with other businesses, and collaborate and, help each other out in different ways, or use each other's services to scale, whatever it may be. We're just that's kind of what we're going to be talking about.
I love that. So let's grab one tip. So what's one talking point that you have on that subject, or one piece of advice you would tell your clients if they say, hey, I'm trying to scale my business and looking for ways that, to do that? What's one takeaway we can give people today?
One of my favorite things, and I think, not all businesses will have the ability to do this, but I'm a big believer in skin in the game, and having some sort of profit sharing agreement would be huge, right? So I'll give an example. Let's say a business is looking to hire a marketing agency. That marketing agency, like a good one's going to charge you, I don't know, 10 grand a month retainer, right? A good one, maybe more. Like the really good ones are probably 50. I've gotten quotes in the 70K range. So good ones charge a lot, right? But I would rather, if I was a business owner and I was hiring marketing agency, I would rather give them less. I understand they need to be compensated for their time, so I'll give them some sort of retainer, but I would rather have them be incentivized monetarily by how they perform, and give them some sort of equity or profit share of sales or something like that, because I think people are more motivated when they have skin in the game. So that's kind of one little nugget that I believe is a way to have the ability to win together, and scale fast. Because if you find the right partner and they're good at what they do from a marketing standpoint, and they get compensated based off their performance, I think they're just going to put in a little bit extra effort than they normally would if they're going to get their 10K retainer regardless of how they do.
Well, it's that I think that advice buys creativity, right? And I love that advice, because I think anytime you can find the ability to create synergy, but motivation in the relationship as well, that marketing company then goes from, yeah, did we write blog posts and do backlinks and put the ads up, to like, hey, this isn't working. What the hell do we do to make it work? And they start throwing shit at the wall for you because they're vested, right? And I love that advice, because that's the piece that in a lot of, especially service industry, that misses a lot. They just deliver whatever it is. But if you want to motivate them to really tap into their team's potential, why not put some skin in the game, and vice versa? Love that.
Yeah. Like if you're that good and you're saying you can do A, B, C, D, and E, and you can execute this, then if you're so like, I look at it this way, like I throw it back at them. Like if you're so confident that you'll do this and make it successful, why you should be okay with taking 50% of what you're trying to charge, but have the ability to make 10 times more than that, if it works.
Yeah, if you crush it. I love that.
Right. And then so that's kind of how I test people. So and if they're like, no, we're not going to do that, I'm like, well, then you're full of shit, in my opinion. Right. So I think you even commented on it. I'm looking for, I'm looking to talk to different people about different sales funnels or just marketing funnels. Right. And so that's kind of how I've been approaching it. I'm like, look, I could pay you, whatever your, $2,000 a month retainer to build a funnel, but like, then you only make $6,000 in 3 months. Like, I'd rather set it up where you have the ability to make $10,000 a month residual if you help me do it the right way and we blow this up. And then there's two different types of people that I get. They're like, no, that's not how you work. And then I get other ones that are like, that's fucking awesome. Like, we want to do that.
Yeah, let's go. Let's start tomorrow.
Right. So I can, that's kind of like my part of my vetting process.
Well, I love that, because I mean, I just sent out a sales agreement for training a lot of sales reps nationally. And that was part of the agreement, is like, look, here's what I would charge you. Here's what I'm going to charge you. But here's my upside that I think we should settle on, where at the end of 12 months, we'll look at how much revenue your team has really generated. And if we can hit your number or exceed them, then let's see some cash. Right. And I love that, because now they're like, hey, there must be something here. And I'm confident, like, assuming their sales reps can follow a plan, right? Which I'm sure 35 of them all performing could do something, right? But I love that idea. Right.
Yeah.
So I always like to talk about your journey a little bit. So if you look back on your journey from a professional standpoint, owning business, what's one or two things you wish you had done different, or you would tell your younger self, like, hey, do this, don't do that?
Well, generally speaking, it would be start saving sooner. I think this comes from a previous career, right, in the financial world, but I think if anything is lacking in this country, it's the lack of financial literacy. And if you just do one or two things a tiny bit differently for an extended period of time, not only will it change your future, but it changes your family forever, like generational changes. But I think people don't realize that. So I don't need to get into that too much, but yeah, that's one main thing. I wish I started saving sooner. That's a big one, and most people do, right? When they hit 50 and they're like, shit, I'm not even close to being able to retire, right? And now it's in 10 years, 20 years. Like, what am I going to do? So they're playing catch up. But I think also I'm really hard on myself, and I would maybe tell my younger self that it's okay to play the long game. And you don't have to, beat yourself up so much about it. But for a long time, I didn't realize I didn't have the right mindset. So I like, as opposed to looking at failures as failures, I look at them as learning experiences. So the ability to have, the ability, I would probably start reading books earlier too, right? Like I would have read How to Win Friends and Influence People and Think and Grow Rich 15 years before I did. Maybe that's a good one. I think that's an easy tangible take home for anyone who hears this, right? Is dive into one of those books yesterday, as opposed to waiting till you're 30 like I did.
Well, yes, there's so much there. One plug for all our expert interviews. We have a couple of financial advisors who've been on, and the Save Sooner, it's a common message, and it's one of those things that, like, I don't think it fully resonates until you hit a moment in life where it makes sense for you. But if we can tell it to you 12 times and maybe one of you hears this, like, start maxing out your Roth today, or do something to put some money in the bank, because that compounding effect works, right? And start now, right?
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
but
do it.
There's it's so much easier today than it was when we were kids, right? Today you can start an account with Acorn or Robinhood or one of these. You could imagine if we had the ability to buy a fractional share of Amazon when 20 years ago, when in the 90s, right? Like you couldn't do that then. It wasn't possible. You had to have a crazy net worth. You had to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest. And there was no way you could buy, stocks like from your phone. Like it just didn't exist. So I think today's generation has a much greater advantage than we did. But it's educating them on some of the basic principles and how to use it. I mean, even if you can, like, you don't need to, Amazon's like $3,400 a share, but there's apps that you can just own fractional shares now. So you could just, even if you put $10 in, right, every month when you're a teenager, like it's game changer stuff.
Well, I say, and it's big numbers too. So, I mean, I would say that, if you guys are listening and there's something that resonates, like, go spend the time digging in, like, go find one of those, investment calculator tools and put in, if you start saving today versus when you're 50, and look at the compound, like, look at the difference, and hopefully that'll motivate you to just tuck something aside. And then, man, I love the advice of not being hard on yourself. I mean, that's something that, especially in the entrepreneur world, right? I feel like you beat yourself up a lot, and sometimes, you're gonna fail. Like, I don't know anyone who's gotten anywhere who hasn't been hit by a truck, right? Like, so how do you react to that, though? I think is the lesson. And I love your advice of, like, I always tell people, fail forward, right? Let's take the failure, let's learn, let's not duplicate it, right? That's when we're making big mistakes. Let's figure out how we learn and adapt. That's great advice. Right. And then those 2 books, I always ask 2 books. And I mean, you mentioned 2 of the best, right? And they're on my annual reading list, because I think there's so much content in there that when you're at different journeys and phases in your life, those books are going to speak to you differently.
Right. For sure. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. Being hard on yourself is okay, but to a point, right? And everyone goes through it, and everyone has failures. And one of my favorite things to remember is the most successful people, the only difference between them and you is that they just failed more than you did. Right. And you look at it that way. And you're like, oh shit. One person told me, he goes, why he was speaking to he was like, this guy was like a killer in the financial industry and was just crushing it, had a huge agency. And he said the reason why I'm standing up here and you guys are still sitting down there is because I've eaten more shit than you.
It's true though, right? And but it's a Jordan analogy, right? Anytime you see an interview with Jordan, it's like, well, why were you so good? He's like, I took more shots than you, right? Like I put more time in. So it's just good, and it's a good reminder. Like, guys, if you're having a bad day, it's okay. Like, it's perfectly okay. but how you react to it's what we need you to pay attention to, right? Like
Yep,
you got to come
exactly.
out of it moving forward, right?
Right.
So I love that. Love that.
Mhm.
Any plugs or anything? So below this video, I always include links. Anything you want to plug? You mentioned your networking. You mentioned some of the stuff you're working on. Anything you want to give a shout out to before we wrap
Yeah,
up?
sure. If any business owners are out there listening, they can go to socialregister.com and learn more about, different B2B networking opportunities. There's local chapters, there's virtual networking. So it's a great way to meet, different business owners, collaborate. You never know who you're going to meet on any given day. I like to say you're one connection away from changing the trajectory of your business and your life. You just never know, right? You connected me with someone who I talked to, and we had crazy random things in common, and we're like, how did we even get here? And I'm like, okay, so Devin introduced us, and then Ron introduced me to Devin, and then Ash introduced me. Like, so I just follow the trail, and I'm like, it's crazy. You never know who you're going to meet, and it's not about who you are meeting that day. It could be who you meet that introduces you to someone else that changes everything. And if you never go to that one networking event, or you never take that one call, you never know what could have been. And I don't like knowing that. But socialregisternetwork.com, you can learn more about some of the networking opportunities. And my website for my company is truthcg.com, Truth Consulting Group. But that's it. Or you could put my hand, at Dan Marell on Instagram. I always forget that. I'm not. Social media is just like what is it, right? It's like it's an evil, but you have to deal with it, right?
Right.
There's so much good in it, but there's also, so much not good.
Well, and don't get distracted there, right? I mean, that's something we
Right.
were talking about too. So, man,
So
I love that one.
necessary evil. That's what I was trying to. Necessary evil.
There you go. And I love that one connection line, man. If again, so much good content in the conversation, and reminder to everybody, like none of this is scripted. We just hop on and we're talking business. And Dan's got a tremendous network. He's got a great knowledge base. If anything we've talked about resonates with you and you want to connect with Dan and have a conversation, please do so.
Sure.
As always, I'm always available. Love to have coffee, whiskey, or hop on a Zoom. And below this, there'll be links for everything Dan mentioned. And Dan, man, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy.
Awesome.
Thank you for giving to everybody and adding some value.
Yeah, no, this is great. We should do this like once a month or something.
Heck yeah, let's do it, man.
I love it.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks, Devin.